Okay, so my name's Pete Kennon. I'm the principal of Kennon Architecture and Interiors, and this is our project, Joey Scandizzo Salon. The project's in South Yarra. It's situated directly across the road from South Yarra Station, and it is in the ground floor of a building that was built for the State Savings Bank in 1890. You can see it here on the right, sorry. And the building's quite a prominent building. It's 3 levels, very heavy masonry building, beautiful Italianate Victorian facade detailing. And these photographs from the State Library, this is 1986, reflect pretty much the condition that it's in today. It's a beautiful building, it's impressive just in its nature and its presence. This is a photograph we took on the completion of our project. The project was an interior alteration to the ground level retail space for a hair salon. And to us, we really took out 3 key elements from this project. For me, a retail project is mostly about identity. You need to engage the business owners of the retail store, and a successful project will communicate the values of their business. Why I thought this was interesting is because the building itself has such a strong identity, so the playing between the both is where I think we get our design outcome. You also can't buy a haircut on the internet, so it is primarily a user experience business. Our motive in this entire project was to ensure that the consumer, the customer, the occupants of the building or the space really feel what our difference is. And thirdly, we undertook this project right in the middle of the second lockdown, and it was the only thing that would let me out of the house. So I spent most days on site drawing details with the contractor, the suppliers, the subconsultants for 6 weeks. So it was a pretty rewarding experience for myself and my team, but it was in deep collaboration with the whole project team. So the first experience that you have of the project is from the streetscape. It's very masculine, it's a heavy building. The threshold between the outside and the interior is about 1 metre, it's 900 millimetres. So you feel this thickness in presence of the facade. The image on the right is truly sort of the human eye aspect, and you can see that through a monotone paint finish, you still don't lose the details of the Italianate period facade, but you do sort of turn it into a surface rather than itemised objects. Once entering through the front door, you're struck by quite a monolithic reception desk, which is built from a terrazzo that we specifically sort of altered with the supplier. You can see here that the process is to try and eliminate any overpowering sense of design. We inherited a space that had a ceiling, it had 5 or 6 wall layers that had been shop fit outs that had just continuously built on one another to try and make it a quick shop fit out. So we stripped back everything to uncover all these beautiful details and this extra 1.5 metre in ceiling void that really speaks volumes to what the State Savings Bank would have been back in 1890. Primarily the big key here is this arch detail in the corner. That's an existing detail that we started to focus on because we like the way that it's the change in zone. So the front of house, which is this area to the front, all facing north, and then this arch just sat quietly in the corner that really sort of struck your eye when it was a minimal space. We took this threshold as a motive to then set the geometry up for an individual cutting station. This cutting station is sort of an adaptation of the same dimensions, but developed then into a contemporary sort of design output. Having the set out point from this corner then starts to array these single bays. So what we worked out was that we could detail in quite heavy, sort of in a tight scale, the facade finish of these bays, the type of turning of the wood. We customised a mirror design, we had lighting expertise sort of etching it into the mirror. And then what I love about this is that every viewpoint from within the space creates a different experience of that room. And I think if you contrast this to the facade, it starts to lend itself to quite a feminine, softer, more simpler geometry, but it's feminine in a way to its masculine exterior. When you start to then vision the room as a whole, this key detail that we developed for the arches start to make its way into some of the shelving, the way the walls are treated. We work quite closely with the stonemasons and tilers to build new techniques to join square set tiles that then worked into this plinth. And the whole thing starts to fit together as a whole through these tiny elemental details. Here, this is the front space as well, where you can identify that a new floor system that was built, it sort of wraps up into these plinths that sit in the middle of the space and ground what is really a light scale palette above it. These are my favourite images because I think whilst this gives you an idea of what the space size is, this actually gives you a better understanding of how the space feels. You walk through these enormous apertures. These arch bays are 3.5 metres tall. The volume of the ceiling is another 1.5 metres above that. And it almost has like a buttery quality to the way that we finish the walls and the arches. This view gives you a really good understanding of how that thickness in facade starts to create a difference to the interior. So this shadow line, is about 700 millimetres, and then the way that the light washes against these wall treatments, and it doesn't, one or the other don't overpower each other. I think by placing these small elemental sort of detail photographs, if I was to show you these individually, I think you don't grasp sort of the space in itself, but when you start to see them on a spread with 6, you do feel what the quality of the space is like to occupy. So the second component of the design is when you do walk through that arch, you enter what is a different space. This is the wash bay and the colour area for hair. And the only other material that we introduced was this dichroic film on a glass dividing screen. And you can see as you move around the room, the colours of that light hitting the glass change. It's another sort of layer of, I think, the branding and the business values that creates an interesting sort of midpoint of the customer experience. Again, from the human aspect, these are the elements that you touch, these are the elements that you feel. And to finish, one of my favourite photos is seeing the brutality and the heaviness of the facade, and then identifying that there's an intervention that's occurred on the inside, yet it doesn't disrupt the building in itself, and it adds almost in a complementary manner. The two work in unison, but they're built totally different centuries. So thank you very much.